You may have heard the story of Gregory the Illuminator, the man who converted Armenia into the world's first Christian nation in 301 AD through their king. And his story is genuinely remarkable. But he was in a pit for most of this story, literally underground, for 13 years, while the actual story was happening above him. And the people who moved that story forward, who set the entire chain of events in motion with their lives, were women, 37 of them, who traveled 2,000 miles across the ancient world as refugees, said no to not just one, but 2 kings, and died for it. 2 of their names are Hiripsimi and Gayane. And if you've heard of them at all, it was probably as a footnote in Gregory's story. That's what we're fixing today. Rome was the empire, vast, powerful, and by the late 3rd century, deeply hostile to Christians. Emperor Diocletian, who ruled from 284 to 305 AD, launched what historians consider the last and most severe persecution of Christians in Roman history. He didn't just discourage Christianity, he went after it systematically. Churches destroyed, scriptures burned, Christians imprisoned, tortured, executed. It was organized, it was sustained, and it was terrifying if you were a believer trying to live quietly inside the empire. Now, at some point during this period, Diocletian's men were sent across the empire on what I can only describe as a beauty search. The emperor wanted a wife, or a companion. The sources vary on the specifics. Either way, men were dispatched to find and paint portraits of the most beautiful women in the Roman world and bring those portraits back for the emperor's consideration. They found Hiripsimi. She was a young woman of noble origin living in a community of consecrated Christian women near Rome, led by an abbess named Gayane, who had raised Hiripsimi from childhood. These women had taken vows. They had dedicated their lives to their faith. Marriage to an emperor, or anyone else, was not something they were available for. Diocletian sent a letter anyway. Hiripsimi said no, and that no set off a chain of events that would end with an entire nation changing its religion. When Hiripsimi refused Diocletian, the community understood immediately what that meant. You don't refuse the Roman emperor and stay put. So they ran. 37 women, led by Gayane, fleeing Rome with everything they had, which wasn't much. By 300 AD, Christianity had been spreading for nearly 3 centuries. There were Christian communities scattered across the trade routes through what is now Turkey. Safe houses, sympathetic households, networks of people who would shelter and feed traveling believers. These women weren't moving through completely unknown territory alone. They had a world to move through, even if it was dangerous. One tradition says a vision directed them specifically toward Armenia, where Christianity had already begun quietly taking root, brought there generations earlier by the apostles Thaddeus and Bartholomew. So they went. The accounts say they endured many trials on the road, 2,000 miles across the ancient world east toward the Ararat plain until they reached the city of Akhashapat in Armenia. They found an abandoned wine press on the outskirts of the city. They had survived Diocletian, but they had no idea what was coming next. Armenia at this time was ruled by King Tiridates III. He was a pagan king politically aligned with Rome, and he owed Diocletian. The emperor had helped him reclaim his throne. So when word reached Tiridates about a group of Christian women hiding near Akhashapat, and specifically about Hiripsimi, He had both political and personal reasons to act. Diocletian had already written to him, "Find her and send her back, or keep her yourself." Tiridates sent messengers with gifts, robes worthy of a queen, an invitation that was not really an invitation. Gaiane spoke for the group. She told the messengers plainly, "These women are consecrated to Christ. They cannot enter an earthly marriage." No. Tiridates was not a man who accepted that kind of answer. He had Hypsipyle brought to the palace directly, and when she was before him, he attempted to assault her. The accounts say she fought him off, that she was much stronger than he expected, and he could not overpower her. She escaped, made it back to the other women, told them what had happened, and Tiridates, humiliated, furious his authority was defied by a refugee woman with no army nor political power, made his decision. He ordered them all to be killed. What was done to them wasn't quick. It wasn't merciful. It was designed to be a demonstration. Hypsipyle was seized and tortured. Her tongue was cut out. She was burned. She was killed, and her body was dismembered. Gaiane, the abbess, suffered even worse. She and 2 companions had their legs drilled through and were suspended upside down. They were skinned alive. Their tongues were cut out. Their stomachs were opened. They were finally beheaded. The remaining 32 women were killed by sword. Their bodies were left unburied for 9 days. 36 women who had already survived one empire trying to claim them, who had walked 2,000 miles as refugees to find safety, who said no twice to men with absolute power over their lives, died for it. Hold that, because the history books tend to move past this quickly to get to Gregory and the king's conversion. But these women were not a prologue. They're not set up. They are the story. Rather, the 2 stories. Did you catch that? 37 women traveled, but only 36 died. What happened to the last one? Well, she actually survived and escaped. Her name was Nune, aka Marine, aka Saint Nino. If you watched my video on Patriarch Ilya II, you would know that Saint Nino is credited as the person who converted the neighboring Georgia to Christianity. When Nino escaped, she ended up in Georgia, making it the 2nd Christian nation in the world after Armenia. After the executions, Tiridates was struck down. The accounts describe it as a transformation, that he lost his human form and took on the appearance and behavior of a wild boar, that he could not be reasoned with, could not be reached, could not be healed, that his entire household was afflicted alongside him, that no physician could help, no pagan priest could reach him. His sister had a vision. In it, she was told that there was one man who could restore the king, the same man that the king had thrown in a pit years earlier for refusing to worship Armenian gods, a Christian named Gregory. Gregory had been in that pit for 13 years. By any reasonable calculation, he should have been dead. He survived because a woman had been secretly dropping food into the pit for years, keeping him alive, unknown to the king. When they opened the pit, Gregory was alive. He was brought to Tiridates. He healed the king. Tiridates converted. And in 301 AD, Armenia became the first nation in the world to declare Christianity its official religion. Now, I'm Christian, and I've been sitting with this story for a while, and I have to tell you, the more I looked at it, the more I kept seeing something I recognized. This story doesn't just mirror one story from scripture, it mirrors several, and I don't think that's an accident. Start with Tiridates and Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, most powerful man in the world, was warned by God through Daniel to humble himself. He didn't listen. At the height of his pride, he was struck with madness, driven from human society, and lived like a wild animal, eating grass, his hair like eagle feathers, his nails like bird claws, until he acknowledged God's sovereignty. Then he was restored. Tiridates, king of Armenia, murders 36 consecrated women, struck with madness, loses his human form, behaves like a wild animal, restored only when he humbles himself before the God of the people he persecuted. The structure is the same. Powerful king, act of cruelty against God's people, divine punishment that strips him of his humanity, restoration only through surrender. Lastly, and this one I want you to really sit with, Saul of Tarsus. Not King Saul, the other one, the one we know as Paul. Saul was a persecutor of Christians, not casually, zealously. He hunted them, was present and consenting when Stephen was stoned to death. He was on his way to Damascus to arrest more Christians when God struck him down on the road, blinded, helpless, and a Christian named Ananias, who had every human reason to be terrified of Saul, was told by God to go lay hands on him anyway. Ananias obeyed. Saul's sight was restored, he converted, became Paul, and spent the rest of his life building the very church he had tried to destroy. Likewise, Tiridates persecuted Christians, murdered them, had Gregory imprisoned for years, was struck down by God, was healed by the very man of faith he had tried to destroy, converted, and spent the rest of his reign building the Armenian church. Persecutor, struck down, restored by the people he persecuted, converts, builds the church, word for word. Armenia didn't become the first Christian nation because of a king's decision. A king's decision was the last thing that happened in a very long chain of events. It started with 37 women who said no, who died rather than recant, whose bodies were left in the dirt for 9 days, over whose graves eventually 2 of the oldest Christian churches in the world were built, churches that still stand. Hypsipyle and Gayane are venerated as the first martyrs of the Armenian Church. Their feast days are still observed. Archaeologists in 1979 excavated under the walls of St. Hypsipyle's church and found graves. Bodies interred without heads, consistent with everything the accounts describe. They were real. What happened to them was real. And the nation that emerged from their deaths is still there. Still Christian, after invasions, occupations, genocide, Soviet atheism, still here. Gregory gets the name Illuminator, and he earned it, but the light was lit by women who are buried under churches that bear their names. Remember that. This is the first video in my faith series on Armenia, a country whose relationship with Christianity is unlike anything I had encountered before I started this channel. The next video will be out next Sunday, so subscribe and don't miss it. And if you found value in this, please like and share it, and be sure to check out my channel for other videos you may find interesting. Alright, peace!